Remember the really important bit.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this event with Social Pip that we're running today on behalf of Ambition Broxbourne, which is the economic development arm of Broxbourne Borough Council. We're here to support the businesses within the borough through various different means. Events like these, we've got some networking events coming up, a redundancy surgery next year, and some other activities that are going on, including setting up an innovation voucher and also the, dealing with all the grants that the government have been announcing in the first lockdown and this second lockdown. So if anyone is looking for any support, please let me know if you're in our area, and if you're not in our area, we have links to other organisations throughout the country that we can signpost you to as well. So happy to support you, and I'll put my contact details in the chat as well for you. And enjoy the seminar.
Great, thank you. Are you able to keep an eye on just in case anyone does join late, Helen, and let them in?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, welcome along and thank you. I'm just going to basically share my screen with you, and I just want to check that you can see this. So give me a thumbs up if you can, or wave frantically at me if you can't. Fiona, you're waving at, oh, you can. Oh, I can see somebody waving. Okay, great, perfect, right, brilliant. So basically you are here today for the next hour to hopefully glean some information about what are, as it says there, very simple steps to social media success, primarily as a small business. So I'm going to take you through what I feel, they're not the only ones, but what I feel are the 5 main mistakes that small businesses tend to make on social media, which can be very easily rectified, but if they're not, they can be potentially hugely detrimental as well. So the main sort of way the workshop or session will run is that I will do a very brief intro about myself. We'll then go through the 5 key mistakes. We'll talk about what they are, why they're a bad move, and what you can easily do to rectify them and improve them or avoid them. And then there'll be a question and answer session at the end. So I will probably talk for about 40 minutes, and then there'll be 20 minutes for questions and answers. The way I tend to run these sessions is at the end, I will get you to wave at me if you have a question. So rather than put it in chat, because I'm terrible at keeping an eye on chat, if you can just write them down as they come to you, and they can be about things you hear in this workshop that I talk about, or they can be anything else that you might have in the back of your mind, things that you feel like are holding you up on your social media. Feel free to ask those too, but generally just write them down on a bit of paper and then wave them at the end is the way that I tend to work. So you will need to make sure that you've got your camera on at the end so that I can see you waving. So first of all, who am I? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Pippa Akram. Please call me Pip, it's what I go by. And for some people who know me well through like Instagram and Twitter, you'll know me as Social Pip. I have been doing what I do, it will be 9 years in January. And what I do is I work just with small businesses on their social media, focusing primarily on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And I look to work with businesses organically. So that means unpaid social media. I am not in any way, shape or form an advertising expert. So please don't ask me any questions about advertising on social media, because that is not my area of expertise. I am all about organic growth. I'm about very much empowering small businesses to feel like they can do their social media themselves, because you absolutely can. And I look to demystify and make simple all the information out there, because there's a lot of information and there's a lot of contradictory information as well. So I started out offering just social media management. It soon became clear that people wanted training, because rightly so, rather than passing it to somebody to manage, they wanted to look after it themselves. And then in 2018, I finally gave up the management side and focused just on one-to-one or small group training. Originally, obviously, I did that face-to-face, and I pretty much worked just in Hitchin, occasionally in other areas of Hertfordshire and occasionally in Cambridge. With COVID, I've now gone online, and I have been working with people from all sorts of places, including other countries like Australia and France, but I'm still only working with small businesses, and I'm still very much focused on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. In all honesty, in the last 2 years, I have been pretty much focused only on Instagram through starting up workshops, and just through the demands of inquiries that I've had, I don't think I've actually run a Twitter training session in at least 2 years, sadly, because I do love a bit of Twitter. And most of my inquiries are Instagram. So that's me in a nutshell. Small business, here to empower you, here to make your social media simple, focusing on Facebook, Twitter, and especially Instagram. Okay, so without further ado, let's get on with talking about the 5 biggest mistakes that small businesses make and why you need to avoid them. So, there we go. So I apologise for this picture because now you're faced with a whole load of me. But the reason being that this is to emphasise that always focused on followers. I want more followers. How do I get more followers? My competitors got 4,000, I've got 400. I need to get as many as them. I'm focusing just on a number of followers and amassing a number of followers is hugely detrimental, and it's completely the wrong thing to be focusing on, because what you're looking at is the quantity and not the quality. So by just trying to grow your numbers potentially hugely and amass a number of followers, you're missing out on a number of really vital things that you need to be considering, which just trying to pick up loads of followers won't give you. So the problem with just trying to gather lots of followers and increase your number is that what you're looking at is what we call in social media a vanity metric. It means it's a piece of data that doesn't really give you much back in terms of useful information. Just because you feel hugely popular because you've got 10,000 followers, say, doesn't mean you're actually remotely successful on social media. So if your competitors got a huge amount of extra followers than you, don't look at that, because for all nothing coming back. So lots of likes, lots of followers, none of that necessarily equates to any extra success or sales. So it's the wrong kind of metric to look at. It's just a vanity number. It makes you feel popular. It doesn't necessarily mean that you actually are. So what you're focusing on, if you're looking at just follower numbers, is just a quantity and not the quality of the followers. You're looking simply at a huge potential growth over actually engaging those followers. So don't get me wrong, we always need to be increasing our number of followers, but rather than just focusing on doing that and that alone, we need to be focusing on engaging the followers that we already have, turning them into our kind of community, and that actually happens through connecting with them. That takes some kind of hard work. So if you're just constantly trying to get lots of followers in, what you're doing potentially is making it harder for yourself to speak to them, to engage with them, to work out what content they want to see. And if you're doing that before you've even managed to do kind of any kind of connection or engagement with the followers that you've already got, you're kind of just building up this number, but not building up any kind of connections or relationships with them. And also you have the potential, if you suddenly amass lots of followers, and this might happen through quite often through competitions, Facebook competitions, Instagram competitions, you have to follow this account. If you happen to amass lots of followers, not necessarily for the right reasons, not necessarily because you're providing great content, but because perhaps they want to win something, you are in real danger area of skewing your insights, if you like. So if you go to your insights and you look at what your audience and who your audience are, it won't be correct. It will just be full of people who have potentially followed you for the wrong reasons. So it might say that your gender split is more male than female, but actually that's incorrect, because really your proper quality followers might well be more female, but because you've amassed these incorrect followers, if you like, who followed you for the wrong reason, there'll be the wrong skew there. The age range might be incorrect. And that then feeds into, if you do decide to do advertising and you're basing your ads and paying for your ads and targeting your audience around your current followers, if they're incorrect, you're just going to get all your targeting wrong and pay for ads that are really not going to bring you what you want back. So it's very much a case of needing to really focus on not just collecting followers, but actually connecting with them, getting them to engage with your content, getting them to, maybe have conversations with you, DMs and all that kind of thing. Just a number of followers won't bring you extra leads, and it won't necessarily bring you extra sales. It's what you're actually trying to do with them in real life. And this equates to remembering why you're on social media. Word there is social. We are on there to basically build a community and connect with people. And we can't do that if we don't replicate the things that we do in real life when we meet people in real life. The issue that we have is that we lose sight, because we're kind of behind a piece of technology or on the end of our phones, we lose sight of what actually it means to be human and how we should interact with each other. So we don't go around to networking and just grab loads of business cards. We tend to have conversations and maybe take a card or two, and we'll remember the people that we've had the conversations with rather than just collecting cards. So it's that kind of similar thing. Don't just collect, connect. Okay, so that's the first biggest issue, is just trying to focus on growing numbers over growing a community. The second biggest issue, especially for small businesses, is this one. And again, this is a quantity over quality issue, and it's trying to be on as many platforms as possible. As you can see there are 7 key platforms that you could potentially be on. As a small business, I honestly think if you're going to do a good job, you should probably not be on any more than 2, maybe 3 at an absolute push, okay? But all too often, when I sit and work with small businesses, they're on 4, they're on 5, or we've tried a bit of TikTok or whatever, okay? So don't spread yourself too thin, because that is one of the real dangers. If you are spreading yourself across lots and lots of platforms, you're not going to make an impact, because you won't be able to do a good job. You won't be able to understand the intricacies of each platform, because they all work differently. All their algorithms are slightly different. The content somebody wants to see will work differently on one platform to another. So you'll really struggle to make an impact, because you'll be trying to work them all out. You won't have the time as a small business to be on lots of platforms. You won't feel any kind of sense of real return. You'll be putting content out, but probably not getting a lot back. And then the frustration will kick in, and you'll probably be very tempted to give up, or say that social media doesn't work. So in all honesty, don't try and be on too many platforms. It's better to slay it, as we say, slay it, or just be brilliant on a single platform than to be average on all of them. So the next question I always get is, okay, well, which platform or platforms should I choose? Now, ultimately, you need to make a decision as to where your audience are. It's no good going on a platform where most of your You need to go on a platform where your audience are. You need to go on a platform where you perhaps already feel like you're getting some kind of return, whether that's sales or leads or inquiries or just a sense of community. But when you're a small business and you can't pass this off to somebody else or a team of expertise, you need to balance that with the platform that you actually enjoy as well. Because there is no point in going, right, everybody, it's my target audience on Facebook, but I hate Facebook. You can't, the two won't marry, because you will, again, get frustrated, you won't understand it will feel like a slog. So it's better to try and balance the majority of where your platform are with what platforms you understand and enjoy as well. But scale back. If you're on any more than 3 or 4, you really need to scale back and focus in and go deep and do really well on 1 or 2 before perhaps then moving out to some others, possibly if you have time. Okay, so this is the third biggest issue that I see small businesses making. So here's your content on Facebook. Here's your content on Instagram. And here's your content, say, on Twitter. And it looks exactly the same, because what you're doing is you're posting on one and feeding out to the other. Now, I completely understand why we do this as small businesses. It's the easiest thing to do. Again, if you're on lots of platforms, this connects really with my last point as well. If you're on lots of platforms, it's the easiest way to kind of cover your bases and get your content out on all of them is to post on one and feed it across to the others. This is what we call cross-posting. But as you can see, when you look at that visual there, it's a bit boring. It's completely repetitive. We have really absolutely no reason to follow you on any more than one platform, because you're putting the same things out, okay? So the chances of me, if I follow you on all those platforms, seeing exactly the same thing are quite slim. But it doesn't mean to say it wouldn't happen. So it could become annoying, again, repetitive or boring. And the other biggest issue with just sending something out, and more often than not, this happens from Instagram and it gets fed out to Twitter and it gets fed out to Facebook. So you post on Insta and it goes to the other two, is that things really get lost in translation. Because as I said in my last point, each platform has its own kind of intricacies. They work in slightly different ways. So what makes sense on one platform won't make sense on another platform. So by this, if you look at this example coming up, you can see here 2 examples where a post has been fed to Facebook at the top and fed through to Instagram at the bottom. So in the top example, you can see I have ringed 2 accounts. Now on Instagram, these accounts would be tagged, they would be tappable. If I tapped them, I would be able to go through and view that person's account. On Facebook, that tag does not follow through. So this makes no sense at all. I kind of would know as a user that probably I'm meant to be, this account's meant to be tagged, but I can't tap it. It doesn't make sense, it doesn't link to it. So it looks a little bit lazy and a little bit clumsy. The other big issue that we have when we feed through from Instagram to Facebook especially is we talk about links in bios. So we say, go and click the link in bio in Instagram. And if you send that straight through to Facebook, it makes no sense at all because we don't have a bio in Facebook. You would actually need to put the link into the actual post itself. So there's a real lost in translation thing going on there. With the bottom example as well, again, this is Instagram through to Twitter. You can see because Instagram has 2,200 words available in the caption and Twitter has 280 characters available in a tweet, it has to cut the caption short. So you've got half a caption missing, and then you've just got a plain web link, nothing visual to entice us. So again, there's a real lost in translation. It's almost cut off in translation, if you like. So what you need to do is there's really 4 things that you can do here, depending on the level that you want to sort of, take it and the time that you have available. And those are to do one of these 4 things. And I'll be really honest, the last point, create different content, is the most ideal scenario possible. So you create something different from Facebook, you use Twitter for a different reason, create something different, and you do the same for Instagram. That's the ideal scenario, but as a small business, that's pretty much impossible to do, if I'm honest. It will take far too much of your time. So although I'm saying it's the ideal scenario, it's probably the least likely you're going to choose. So if we start at the top, that's the simplest one. So you say, right, I'm going to post on Instagram, I'm going to feed it out, but what I'm going to do is I'm not going to feed it out at exactly the same time, and I'm going to edit that post before it goes to Facebook or after I've shared it to Facebook so it makes sense, or I'm going to use as a recipe called an if it recipe, which will share your Instagram post, very similar through to the example before, but will attach at least a visual. Okay, so that's the most time sort of like productive option that you have available, is to either edit it slightly before or slightly after you've actually posted on Instagram. Okay, so you don't feed it out straight away, you just then go and share it, but edit it and share it and edit it, so to speak. The second option is to say, right, I'm going to post on one particular platform and then I'm going to cross promote that post on my other platforms. So that would mean I would post on Instagram and then I'd pop over to Twitter at some point and say, oh, kind of just done this on Instagram, and send them a link and try and entice them to go back. So I'm not actually posting the same thing, but I'm saying, oh, go and look. So I'm promoting that post that's on one platform via my other platforms. And then the other option that you have is to say, right, okay, rather than create different content for my different platforms, I'm going to use the same thing. So I'm going to promote this product or this workshop. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to post it and write it for the style that Facebook needs. I'm going to post it and write it for the style that Instagram needs. And I'm going to post it and write it for the style that Twitter needs. Okay, so it's a step up from creating completely different content, same piece of content, but you're actually writing it for the different ways that it's required. So you've got different stages there to play with that will avoid the first image of everything being exactly the same at the same time, and also potentially losing things in translation. Okay. And then we're going to come on to issues about posting. And you've kind of got a bonus here, because although I've said it's 5 key sort of errors that small businesses make, there's actually a couple of sort of pointers within this particular sort of area that I'm going to talk about. So this is to do with mistakes with posting, which all too often lead to this. Nothing. Okay, there's nothing worse than putting something together and getting nothing or very little in return in terms of likes or comments or shares or saves. You kind of get tumbleweed, you get crickets. It's really frustrating. And let me tell you, it does happen to all of us, so you're not alone. But more often than not, small businesses tend to face this because they, again, are just sort of like rushing for time and they don't think things through. And all you need is just a couple of pointers that will help you try and avoid this, nothingness, if you like. So the first one is you're going to think, what is going on about, is to stop selling too much. Okay, so sometimes what I'm talking about here, the biggest error is to constantly be talking about sales, latest product, this is new in, discount here, sale starts here, but to talk about it all of the time. Okay, it's just too off-putting, because what happens is that we get bored by it. It's just too much. We don't get enough from you other than sales, 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 sales. And also the danger is that often sales type posts, and this is especially on Instagram, it shows, but very much sales type posts tends to get less engagement. So that means likes or comments or clicks on things, because of the very nature of the fact that they're sales, it kind of puts us off. It doesn't mean that you won't get sales out of them, but you will get less engagement. But the danger is if you're consistently doing a sales post and you're getting less and less engagement, the platform algorithm won't be able to find any signals from any of your followers that they're actually interested in your content, because they're going, less engagement means that the algorithm goes, no signals, not important. So the next time you post, again, less engagement. And what happens is that the algorithm goes, no, this account's not important, their content's not very interesting, and you get sort of ranked lower and lower and lower. And all those signals you need to help you be visible just aren't there. And actually it becomes then harder and harder for you to maintain that visibility. So it's a case of balancing sales posts with less salesy posts. Don't get me wrong, we are always selling, but there are ways to do subtle selling rather than just be completely in your face all the time with like 10% discount, new product in, I've got availability here, there and everywhere. So you have to balance it out. So don't be salesy, salesy, salesy 100% of the time. What you need to do is this: you need to change your mindset and think about treating your social media accounts much more as if you are a person trying to make friends than a business trying to make money. And I know some of you are probably thinking, what is she on about? But I'm honest, when hand on heart, if you change that mindset, you will honestly see more success in terms of the way that you get reactions from your content and in terms of the way that inquiries will come in, etc. Because I want you to think about when you, at the end of the day, sit down and take off your business hat, and you've got your cup of tea or your wine or your beer or whatever it might be, and you kick back and you log on to your phone or your laptop to have a look at your social media. So nothing business related at all. You're not checking your insights, you're not doing anything, you're coming at it from a completely personal point of view, which is what most of your followers and likers will be doing. And I bet for most of you, you wouldn't go, oh, I'm logging on to see the latest ad, or, oh, I must check what my brand is selling now, or I must check what my favorite company's discount currently is. The chances are you're not logging on to do that. You are logging on to, if it's Facebook, probably find out what your friends and family are up to, maybe pop to into a local group and see what maybe events are, when we get back to having proper events and not virtual ones, are going on. If you're probably dipping into Twitter, it's to find your communities, perhaps catch up on the news, get involved in some topical conversations. On Instagram, it's just probably to have a look at people's stories and see what they're up to. More often than not, it's not to be sold to. We want to connect, we want to be inspired, we want to be distracted, we want to have a laugh, we want to learn something new, we want to be entertained. And that's what you need to do on your accounts as a business, as well as dropping in those really obvious sales calls, because it's those kind of things that your followers log on to do. If you give it to them, that will keep your engagement nice and high, which when you do a really obvious sales call and the engagement isn't quite so active, it doesn't matter, because that engagement before and all those conversations and how people have bought into you balance all of those ups and downs of engagement from different posts out. Okay. So the other thing as well that can really help you when you post is to very much be aware of your audience. So this is an example of a deli that has clearly put a piece of content out because they want to sell their truffle oil in time for Christmas. But the problem is, if you look at the way that they have written it, is they have very much discounted a hefty part of their audience, because they have written it for the truffle lover in your life, or for somebody who knows what to make with truffle oil. And I'll be really honest, when I looked at this, I was like, well, I don't have a truffle lover in my life and I have no idea what to do with truffle oil. So I moved on, okay? I obviously came back to it to use this as an example, but I moved on, I was clueless. I don't know what I do with truffle oil, and my husband definitely has never ever mentioned truffle oil to me, so he's not a truffle lover. So they've written it from the point of view of the business trying to talk about their latest product, and not from the point of the view of the people who are going to read it, other than if you're already a truffle lover or you know what to do with truffle oil. So they've immediately discounted probably quite a substantial amount of their audience, because certainly I was clueless. Now I did a bit of Googling and I worked out that actually truffle oil you can't really cook with. You're meant to drizzle it on roast potatoes, pasta and salads. So what you should do here is say, right, I've got a very niche product here. I don't want to discount all my audience. I want to try and open this up to as many people in terms of people who are going to react to this post. And I need to probably have a think about whether actually everybody does know about truffle oil, because the business goes, oh yeah, I know what to do with truffle oil, but the audience is going, I haven't got a clue. So an ideal scenario here would be to say, right, we've got truffle oil. What would you do with it? Would you A, drizzle it on your roasties, or B, use it in your pasta in a recipe? And that way, what they're doing is they're encouraging engagement, because I'm going to make an A or a B choice. And also for somebody like myself who's clueless, I'd be able to go, oh, I can drizzle it on this or I can drizzle it on that. So I'm immediately given some ideas as to what to do with this very niche oil. So they're opening out their content to everybody rather than just writing it from the point of the view of the business who knows exactly what to do with truffle oil. They're thinking about their audience reading it who has probably not much clue as to what to do with truffle oil. So you almost have to imagine that your audience pretty much don't know what you're talking about unless you stand from their point of view and talk to them in that way from standing in their shoes. It's something that's much easier for me to talk about than to actually always do, but wherever possible, stand in their shoes rather than write it from your point of view. So as an example, here's some very dry material. And I'll be really honest, I wrote this post, okay? But here's some very dry material. So this was just before I finished social media management. I worked for Bluebell's Childminders and I looked after their social media for them. And they sent me through on one day 6 photos of a man up a ladder, a van, and some buttons on their new security system, okay? Not really the most exciting content to put out. And they're like, Pippa, can you please tell everybody we've got a new system? So I could have just gone, hey, here's our new system. But that probably really wouldn't have got much reaction back. So what I did was I stood in the shoes of the people who were going to read it, their audience, which are parents, and it helped obviously that I am a parent. And I thought, right, when you're a parent and you leave your child somewhere, what's always in the back of your mind? And there's always that element of worry. Are they okay? Are they happy? Are they, safe and secure? So I keyed into that and used that, as you can see in the post, in that top line. We know that this is always your prime concern, so this is what we've done. And then I put out some very boring photos, basically. And you can see from one of the comments that, what I'm trying to say, basically, well done for understanding your parents' #1 priority. So it's about understanding your audience who are going to read your post and trying to write it for the person who is going to read it rather than write it as the business. Okay, so that's a really sort of important but not always the easiest thing to do, is to stand in their shoes. So it's about posting your content so it encourages a reaction from understanding them, and there are other ways to encourage reactions as well. But one of the dangers is that we go from almost excluding the audience and not getting much engagement to then trying to go to the other extreme of pushing for engagement because it's really, really important. And don't get me wrong, engagement is important. So every time someone clicks a link or looks at your photo or makes a comment or shares your post or just likes it, it sends the algorithm the right signals that people are interested, which means the next time you post, the algorithm takes all that into account and helps show your content. But also you've got to bear in mind that sometimes your goal isn't always to get lots of engagement. Your goal might be to sell a product or get people to sign up to a newsletter or buy a ticket for a workshop or something like that. So again, you have to balance certain goals against keeping the engagement healthy. But the one thing you mustn't do is really try and push for engagement all the time and go to the other extreme. So what I'm talking about here are these kind of competitions. So this is one from a few years ago on Facebook, where as you can see, you have to share and like the post to enter. So if you look at the bottom, the engagement statistics there are quite phenomenal for a small business. 853 shares, 217 comments, and 696 reactions. I mean, all your green arrows are going to be green on Facebook when that happens. You know, you're going to sit back and go, look at my engagement statistics. They're great. But actually, again, this is a quality-quantity issue, because you've got a quantity of engagement, but no real quality, because you have forced it. The prerequisite for entering the competition is to like and share. So you could be going, well, hang on a minute, there's 217 comments here. That's really good. But actually, I didn't go through all 217, but I did have a hefty look through, and they're pretty much all saying, I liked and shared, I've entered the competition. So there's nothing there of value at all. There's nothing that gives us anything really back at all, other than lots and lots of engagement statistics. So what we're talking about trying to drive is quality engagement. So this is slightly different here. Nothing in this engagement that you can see here was forced. So at this time I was working with the restaurant, and they wanted to let their followers know that there was going to be a menu change, but they were just going to sort of like thinking about putting out a photo of a menu. And I sort of said to them, well, rather than just putting out a photo of a menu, let's see if we can get some sort of like feedback and real traction and some engagement going and get people talking about this menu change. So we keyed into understanding our followers, because we knew that the goat's cheese was one of their top dishes. So we keyed into understanding that that could be quite controversial to change, and suggested, we didn't say we're going to change it, we suggested we might change it. Nowhere there does it say, other than kind of, you know, let us know, nowhere does it say you have to like, you have to comment, you have to share. And as you can see, although the numbers at the bottom are far, far less in terms of comments and likes and shares, far, far less than the competition before, everything that came through was of real value. So there were 12 authentic shares there. Nothing was forced. No one was told to share. We certainly learned that that's a really popular choice on the menu, and that probably most people wouldn't want to see it go. And out of those 45 comments, what we learned was actually there were several dishes that had been removed from the menu which were really popular and people wanted to come back. Because this post actually did well, more people saw it than previously, so it had good reach, and actually people were suddenly going, oh, we haven't booked for a while, let's go along, especially if they might be removing this dish. And we had lots more uptake of bookings as well. And the restaurant actually said there were people coming in when they'd booked and talking about this, and please don't change this dish. So for awareness, for understanding what the audience wanted in terms of perhaps new menus and dishes back in, there was a lot of what we call really valuable engagement there that told us lots of things. And plus it made the audience feel really involved in decision making and stuff as well. And none of that engagement there was forced. Nowhere does it say you have to like, you have to share, you have to save, or any of those things. And just a word on that last competition, let me flip back to it. These competitions as well are actually against Facebook's terms of business, because you're not allowed to share and you're not allowed to tag people as part of their terms of service, because not only will it land you in potentially hot water with Facebook, but because it goes against the Advertising Standards Authority's fairness of competitions, because you can't see everyone who shares, it would actually deem this an unfair competition. You can land yourself in really hot water with the Advertising Standards Authority too. So make sure whenever you are running a competition, not only does it match the criteria required by the platform you're running the competition on, but also it adheres to all the Advertising Standards Authority's criteria that's required too. And again, the danger with this kind of competition, if it had asked for lots of people to follow you as a prerequisite, I mean, this one doesn't, but more often than not they do, we're back to square one with my first point of just kind of pushing lots of followers through, which actually, you know, don't necessarily want to follow you or engage post competition too. So it's about quality of engagement there. And this is my final point as well, which I hope none of you here are guilty of, but this is what we call just broadcasting. So as a business, you might still be doing all the right things, thinking about your audience when you put a post together, but actually not engaging with them in any way, shape or form. You're just putting out your content, you're just doing this, it's just all about me, and no engagement with them. And this can even extend to not even replying to messages that come in as well, which I know sounds really basic, and I'm sure none of you are guilty of it here. But in the past, I have messaged small businesses and I've heard nothing back from them. I've messaged about hiring spaces, I've messaged about sending cakes to somebody, And it's really simple things. There's no point on being on social media if you're not going to be social in any way, shape or form, and especially if you're not going to respond to what's very obvious sales calls. So don't just what we call broadcast, you need to engage as well. And if you are just one of those people who are just ignoring everything that's kind of coming in, which I'm sure you're not, we can see as followers that it's a one-way street. We can see if people are making comments and you've not even liked them as a business page or whatever, or not responded. And for us, we go, well, what's the point of actually getting involved? Because you're really sort of just all about you, and there's no social in there at all. And the key word in social media that is hugely overlooked is that very word, social. And what you should then be doing really is thinking about this. You can't expect masses of engagement from people if you are not prepared to engage yourself. And that's as basic as replying to messages or replying to a comment somebody makes, but you can take this a stage further. And I do recommend as a small business that you do build time in to go out and search for people to get involved with and talk to and and build a community with. So you might go and search for your target audience. That's pretty obvious. You might go and search for industry peers and get involved with conversations there. And you might go and search as well for people that you might want to collaborate with further down the line on a possible project. I mean, your target audience are obviously a key one. Now, some platforms make this easier than others. So for example, on Facebook, this is really hard to do. You can't really, as a business on Facebook, go and search for any potential target audience. You kind of have to wait for them to come and find you on your page. The only place you can hang out and try and find some people who might be your target audience are groups. So it's either a case of finding a good group, and by good group, I mean one where it's not a constant stream of spammy sales messages, and actually there's some sense of community, of support, of conversation going on, or creating one yourself. But don't just rush in and do that, because a Facebook group, although it might be on Facebook, running one of those is exactly the same as being on a different social media platform, because they require hard work too. So Facebook makes trying to find people to connect with very difficult. Twitter and Instagram, it's much easier. So on Twitter, the searching capability on Twitter is absolutely phenomenal. So let's just say you're a florist. On Twitter, you could search for people within a 5 to 10 mile radius who are talking about having got engaged, because if they got engaged at some point down the line, they're probably likely to need a wedding florist. Twitter searching is that powerful. You can do that. You can find people who are tweeting your competitors. You can find people who are having all sorts of conversations that you need to get keyed into. On Instagram, the searching capability is good. It's not as good as Twitter though, because you are limited to searching through hashtags and geotags, or just hanging out on other people's accounts and seeing who's making comments and getting involved. So if I had to rank searching capabilities for a business to go out and find people they want to connect with, my first choice would be Twitter, my second choice would be Instagram, and then Facebook, it's hugely, hugely difficult. But the key thing is that you need to, if you want lots of engagement, you need to encourage that engagement, respond to that engagement, and build in time to go and what we call do proactive outreach and find people to engage with and bring them into your account. So to summarize, the key things to keep an eye on are making sure that your followers are the right ones and not just a mass of people, and that you are encouraging them to engage with your account. That with your platforms, if necessary, rein it back in. Don't spread yourself too thin at all. 1 and 2, even one platform as a small business, if you're really doing well, is fine, to be honest. 2 is great. Any more could be a bit of a push. Content, make it different in some way. So don't just post on one platform and send it out at exactly the same time. Tweak it, edit it, or make it entirely different. Do whatever fits you in the time that you have available, but don't just make it. If you send it out all at the same time, it's like looking at 3 TV screens all showing the same thing. So try and make it different in some way. Posting, don't be too salesy all of the time. Encourage quality interactions and always write as much as possible with your audience in mind. And then the last one I just spoke about, at least respond. I know it sounds really basic, but at least respond to whatever comes in, and make time in your planning for outreach and searching for people wherever possible. Okay, so that's my presentation done. Now it's question time. So who has a question? Give me a wave if you have a question. No one's waving. Ah, hooray, Kaylee. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi, so I'm Kaylee from Able Mountain Wear, a huge follower of Social Pip on Instagram. And I have a question actually, because there's something I wanted to do to tweak my business, and I was going to put it out over Instagram. I didn't know whether it was post, but possibly like a story poll. So it'd be great to get your feedback on this. Was at the moment my men's t-shirts are men's and unisex, and I have been wondering, do I just change it so it says unisex, because obviously, you know, gender is a huge topic at the moment. I wanted to get feedback from my followers before I made a big decision. So do you think that would be a good thing to like put out over a story, or would it be more visible as a post?
Okay, so that's a good question. You could do both, to be honest, because what you will probably find with your stories is that you'll have less views but higher engagement than with the grid. But on the grid, you'll have potential for more reach, but probably less engagement. Yeah. So it depends. I mean, for me, probably I would tend to just do stories, but I have quite an active following, quite a good viewing figures. So if you don't necessarily have that, it might well be good to ask on both of them, but obviously you would do it in different ways. The stories, you've got the poll sticker just built in for something like that. On the grid, you would probably need to obviously maybe have a swipe through with different choices or whatever, but there's no harm in doing the same thing twice, if you see what I mean. But obviously you need to do it different ways.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you.
That's right, pleasure. Okay, any more questions? Please wave. I'm here, use me. There's many people not waving. Anyone else, or is anybody go on, Louise, go for it. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Hi. So I'm trying to reach out to the target audience by pet professionals or dog owners. So I use Facebook, and in conjunction with my dog OP. What other methods? I use Instagram, but what other methods do you think I would be able to reach out to such a wide community? Because obviously so many people have dogs, and trying to sort of let them know that there are these life-saving skills out there that can be used before the animal then will go on to the vet. Okay, so tell me exactly what it is that your business does, because that will probably help me with this. So Dog First Aid is a franchise, and we're approved by trading standards, so we're the only canine emergency care provider that has that. So that puts us a peak above other dog first aid providers. And we teach the essential life-saving skills. So it's similar to a St John ambulance life-saving, except ours is aimed at dogs. Right, and it would be selling to somebody like myself who's a dog owner. Yes, yeah. Would you like to come on a course? Do you have an advertising budget? Yes, so I'm a part of a franchise, but then I have my own budget that I've set aside for my business. So by my advertising, obviously during this time it's been very difficult because I've not been able to run my face-to-face courses. We've been going live and interactive, which for me isn't quite the same as running those courses. But just trying to be really visible. So I started September 2019, and it's just really sort of getting out there. I've joined the Love Hoddesdon bids, the Buntingford Chamber of Commerce, so I've been quite specific with my networking groups, but obviously it's such a big area. And trying to sort of enlighten as many people as possible is quite a challenge that I face. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I asked about advertising budget, as I think probably you could potentially, but again, you need to know what you're doing on advertising, because otherwise it's very easy to waste money on Facebook with your ads. But you could probably very easily run some very targeted ads alongside some organic activity. So have you joined any? Because I'm presuming that, because it's a bit unknown at the moment as to when we're going to be able to do sort of face-to-face stuff, that you are trying to do as much virtually as possible. Am I right? I am. It's difficult though, because I've got a small flat and there's just myself and my dog. So when I'm doing my face-to-face or the Zoom courses, live and interactive, Opie usually wants to step in and be all over me and look at the screen, so it doesn't look 100% professional. So I bribe him with treats and toys to try and keep him away for a period of time. So for me, I prefer that, and I think when there's aspects of practicing CPR on dummy dogs, that to be able to issue a certificate to qualify someone, they need to do those practical elements. That's just my opinion, but for me that's important.
Okay, so if because obviously we're in a difficult stage at the moment about being able to take things virtually and being able to really rather do them face to face. So I think obviously face to face is going to be very much location based for yourself. So my advice would be that you probably need on Facebook to hang out in, if they exist, because obviously I appreciate that a lot of local business, business type Facebook or even non-business resident type Facebook groups tend to be full of a lot of spammy stuff or whatever, but you can actually probably hang out if you can in some local Facebook groups. And there is a function within the Facebook group which means that you can search for keywords. So probably people aren't going to be saying I need dog CPR, but just people talking about pets and dogs and walks and things like that. So if you key into those keywords, you can find conversations going on with potentially your target audience. So if I think about my local Facebook group, quite often we have Tongue Out Tuesday, I think it is, or something about Pet Friday. So there's a lot of people with dogs who, posting about their pets. So immediately, for somebody like yourself, it would be great for you to not go, oh, I do pet CPR, but for just you to go, oh, really cute dog or whatever, and get involved in conversations. Again, people might be asking for walks with their dogs, and you can advise on those in the local area. So for a local face-to-face, that would probably work. For the more virtual, you might need to sort of like think about the advertising budgets to kind of make sure you're targeting the right people, because potentially, obviously, virtually could be anywhere really. So I would say local, probably Facebook group would do you good as long as you can find a good one to get involved with conversations. And virtually, if you do unfortunately have to continue on that path, you probably need to have a look a bit more at Facebook advertising to bring you maximum return for minimum time, if that makes sense.
That's great. And would I just look in the search engine for specific words and Facebook would then bring that up?
So yeah, if you go into the actual Facebook group that you want to search, there is, so it's in different places depending on whether you're on a phone or whether you're on the web, but there is a little search bar in there where you can just put your keyword in. Now, unfortunately, it will pick up that keyword not only in the post, but in any kind of comments, so you'll have to sift through. But when the search results come back, you can also then order them by recency, because it comes through sort of, I think, by popularity. So you can have one from years ago. So if you make sure you put the most recent button, then you'll be able to see the chronological order of them.
Oh, that's fantastic advice. Thank you ever so much.
Yeah, pleasure. If you go and try and find it and you find you can't do it, if you let Helen know, she can ping you my email and you can get in touch and I can walk you through it or whatever.
Brilliant. Thank you.
No problem. Wave at me. Anybody else who might have a question? Rachel.
I've put some stuff in the chat group, if that's okay.
Let me have a look. I keep my followers updated on my story, but don't have any views. I try to engage with things like polls. How many times should I be posting? Okay, so for stories, getting people onto your stories is a question actually that comes up time and time again. You kind of have to almost educate people as to what they'll find on your stories that perhaps they can't find on your grid, for example. And the key thing is that once you start sort of like getting people to view your stories, it's about making sure that the content in there is sort of interesting, fun, relevant, helpful, and keeps them engaged as well. So it's a bit of a balancing act, but you're right, the difficult thing can be getting people over to your stories. So sometimes doing things that only happen in stories and letting people know about that can be a huge driver to get people over there. So if I think about what I'm doing Instagram challenge at the moment. So I put it on my grid. I said every day the tasks are in the stories, you won't get them anywhere else. So the only way to access it is to go to my stories. So currently there's a huge amount of people that don't normally view my stories viewing them because they know there's something special that they can't get anywhere else over them. And then the important thing is once you've got people watching the stories is to keep them engaged through engagement stickers, because that will help create those moments of what I call a micro connection. And again, every time they tap something in those stickers, not only are they hopefully giving you information you can use, but also that those little taps feed through to the health of the algorithm and keep people interested, and just the algorithm knowing that these people are interested as well. But you're right, the difficult thing is getting people over there. So it's a mix of content and of keeping people engaged. and of having sort of just conversations in direct messages as well, which will then keep people coming back because they'll know that you respond too. So it's a mix of things, predominantly trying to think about what you can put in stories that you can't give them anywhere else, and perhaps doing those things regularly as well. So for example, if they know something comes up on one day a week, they'll kind of know that each week that's there for them to see, and then they'll go back to it, hopefully. I hope that kind of answers that. Does that answer that for you?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the key thing is don't worry if your story views are quite low. So I think the average percentage currently, and Instagram stories are doing slightly funny things with their views at the moment, but the average percentage of viewers is about 7 to 8% of your total followers. So if you've got roughly that, you're on the right lines. If you've got any more, brilliant. So you'll never ever have as many people being able to view your stories as on the grid, because the nature of stories is that only really your followers can access them, but it's getting your followers over there onto them that can be the difficult thing, and then keeping them there. But that is a mix of engagement, conversations, content, perhaps something that's, you know, as I said, quite unique, that happens every week but doesn't happen anywhere else as well.
Okay.
And your other question was, interesting that you said the platforms you don't like. I use Instagram mainly, and I'm guilty of cross-posting to Facebook. I don't really understand Facebook, but I find my target audience use Facebook more than Instagram. What should I do? Okay, this is a really tricky one. Gosh, there's a tricky one, because if your target audience are mainly on Facebook, part of the argument is that I mean, you can't give it up. That's the one thing I definitely say. But if you don't enjoy it, you need to kind of try and find a way forward where what you're putting out on Instagram can feed through, but not necessarily cross-post through, but in such a way that it's easily tweakable, but will still hopefully get you some result. Or if you perhaps, I mean, is there any part of Facebook you do like?
Not really. I don't really understand it.
Well, that's probably where perhaps first of all, you know, the fact that you don't like it comes from. Maybe what you need to do is you need to sit down and try and sort of like find a way forward so that you do understand Facebook and it just feels much more manageable, which may well be still not cross-posting immediately, but sending information across from Instagram to Facebook, but just using other parts of Facebook in a different way. So I often say to small businesses, because Facebook is a bit of a beast for small businesses, you can feel so much from Instagram so much more quickly than the same amount of work on Facebook. So I often say to small businesses, what you perhaps need to do is use Facebook in a different way. So have a presence on your page, but it's not necessarily the most active, but you're very active perhaps in one or two groups in particular, and that's how you use Facebook. Okay. So it's about finding that kind of way forward that will work for you. But I think probably if the fact that you don't understand it, that's most likely a bit of a barrier in the first place, and maybe trying to work out what it is that you don't understand, what you need to know, and getting that sorted.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, that's really helped. And the last thing was like, how many times would you suggest posting a week? Because I don't want to like overload my followers.
Okay.
Active.
This is again a quality quantity kind of thing, which is always about quality on social media. I don't think there's any right or wrong in terms of amount of posting. I mean, you'll hear people say you should post every day on Instagram, but actually you shouldn't post every day on Instagram. You should be posting things of quality, and if you're posting every day, your post on Tuesday will be battling for visibility with your post on Monday, and your post on Wednesday will be battling with, you know, that sort of a scenario. So Facebook's a little bit trickier because it is a bit more of a beast of a platform. So maybe you perhaps scale down the quantity of times you post on Instagram, you might tweak them up slightly on Facebook and see what happens. But personally, I think you need to post in terms of whatever quantity is available for you to post at a consistent rate. So if you can only say, you know what, I can only do 2 brilliant posts a week on Facebook, and by brilliant, you know, you've thought about the visual, you've thought about how you're writing the caption, and you've thought about what kind of engagement you want to drive, etc., etc. If you can only do 2 quality posts a week, but you know that you can do that every week, then that's fine, rather than sitting down going, well, I'll do 5 that week, 1 that week, I won't do it for 2 weeks, and then I'll pop back in and do another one. It's very much more about consistency of quality rather than quantity at any time, in my opinion, especially for a small business.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
That's all right, pleasure. Does anybody else want to wave at me? There's a couple more minutes left. Any other questions? Wave at me. Fiona.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
I can, yeah.
Cool. You mentioned about doing some active outreach So I predominantly use Instagram because I'm also not a massive fan of Facebook, and I find Instagram just easier to navigate. How would you think is the best way to actively outreach to people? I use tags and stuff, but I often find the tags that I look into. So I sell and make driftwood and sea glass type pictures. So a lot of the tags that I'm using are by people that either do the same thing or collect sea glass. So they're not necessarily looking to buy anything, and the people that are potentially looking to buy things are not looking up sea glass hunter, so how do you what is the best way to look out for the right sort of market, for the right target audience?
Okay. Obviously there's lots of other things you could do about attracting people through newsletters and your own content, but in terms of proactive outreach, for you to go and find the people who are interested in those kind of products, the best thing for you to do is to go and have a look at either direct competitors and have a look at who's making comments, have a look at who's perhaps tagged them in posts, because obviously they bought from them, because at the end of the day, those are the people who obviously like that style of work and also are interested in buying that kind of, those kind of items and products and crafts as well. Then you go and have a look at their accounts, and you would either perhaps directly know that you need to follow them, or you might kind of just like a few posts of theirs and make valuable comments. Don't just do all these kind of like, hey, I'm here, big thumbs up or whatever. You make a valuable comment. So you're looking for an authentic connection. If the connection is not there, don't force it. You're looking for something that's obvious to connect with, something you can compliment them on, or somewhere they've been that you recognise, or they've baked a chocolate cake and that's on their account and you love chocolate cake. Something that feels a real connection and a very real way to make that kind of like, hi, I'm here kind of thing. So I would look for those kind of things, comments, people commenting and people who've tagged them. And similarly, other accounts, not necessarily direct competitors who do exactly as you do, but people who might share a similar target audience. So they might not be buying your particular style of product, but we know, you can tell that they like that kind of arts and crafts and homemade, handmade world. Or people who, because obviously you're predominantly, did you say it was to do with sort of like driftwood?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps accounts that are very much related to people who love the sea, because if there will be accounts out there all to do with waves and whatever, because they're in surfing, because those kind of people will absolutely, I know I used to live in Cornwall, will absolutely love the kind of products that you produce as well. And the other things as well is that there'll be virtual markets and things happening at the moment, so there'll be hashtags for those. So if you search on the hashtags, yes, what you'll get is the products being sold at that point in time, but you'll also be able to see again people who are making comments about being interested or liking those particular styles of items. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's how I would recommend that you kind of use that outreach sort of searching, if you like. Does that make sense?
No, that sounds, no, it does. I sometimes I definitely feel like that, commenting on things and sort of feeling like, hi, can we be friends? I always feel like sometimes it does feel a little like I try and make just sort of general nice, oh, that's a really pretty picture you've made, or that I love that place at the beach or something. But sometimes you sort of feel like you are just forcing it a little bit, and I don't want people to feel like that is the case. I want people to feel like what I'm saying is as authentic a compliment or whatever. So it's trying to find that balance, but no, that makes sense. Thank you.
Absolutely. And sometimes if you do feel like it's going to be forced, sometimes it's better to just leave it and move on, or maybe just like a couple of things and not try and force that comment, which would then feel forced, because even likes, people will notice those. Obviously nothing's more powerful than words, but even a couple of likes can sometimes put you on their radar, and they might go, oh, who is that kind of thing.
Thank you.
That's right, pleasure. Okay, I think we're nearly out of time. Any more questions at all? Let me just check chat. No, I don't think so. Okay, cool. Right, well, thank you all very much for joining, and have a nice rest of the day. And for most of you will know where to find me if you do have any questions on Instagram. And I am also on Twitter as well. My Facebook page is one of those ones which says you can find me over on Instagram and Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, because basically I'm spreading myself too thin by being on there as well. So yeah, if you need to find me at all, Instagram and Twitter are my main places. So thank you very much, and have a nice rest of the day. And I'll do the Zoom wave that we all do so well. Bye.